Hey, Kate, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Mike. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you for doing the podcast. Just want to talk to you, and for people that a lot of people know who you are, and the new generation probably just knows you from high school handball and doesn't know much about your background. We kind of started at the same time handball, I think, pretty close to the same time. Um, do you just kind of want us to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing now, how you kind of started handball uh, quite a while ago?
Yeah, it has been quite a while.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think you and I started right around the same time. For me, I think it was grade 11 I started playing, so like 1995. So it's been a while. Yeah, started playing at high school. I went to Shep and played there and had a great group of girls there. And we went from that to Alberta Summer Games and then Nationals the following year in grade 12, so Junior Nationals, where we got stomped. And then 4 years later, my last year Junior Nationals, we were in the finals, so that was kind of a highlight at that point.
yeah.
And then a few years later to win it at Senior Nationals was really, really fun. I had the opportunity once to play for Canada and go to Brazil, and that was a pretty cool experience. Then I've gotten to coach quite a bit. So like you said, some of them might know me as a coach. So I coached at Shep when I was in university, and when I was my first teaching job at LY Cairns, they didn't have handball, so I went back and coached at Shep. Then I went to Eastglen, where I coached for 7 years, the girls for 6 out of the 7, and I helped with the boys all 7. And then I switched to Osborne, and I've been there for 5 now, and coached the boys for all 5, and I guess 4 because we didn't have this season. And this would have been my 3rd season with the girls as well at Osborne. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, my background with where we're at. I've had the opportunity to be involved with Alberta as a player, as a coach, and as a trainer, or, glorified athletic therapist. I won't use that term lightly because my best friend has the degree in it and I don't. But I've been lucky to go on numerous trips that you've given me the opportunity to travel the world with a lot of our youth teams, and that's been pretty incredible too.
Yeah, you've had a huge handball career in Alberta handball. Like, when people talk about handball and where it's come in the last 25 years, I mean, your name pops up a ton. From the time, like, when you were in high school handball, and then you were starting with the Alberta teams, what do you see as a big difference from then to now?
The quality of the game is huge. I mean, players now, their ability that they have in high school surpasses what we had, our first year of senior nationals. The opportunities that they have, I think, is incredible. I mean, we trained all year and we went to Regina. If we were lucky, nationals were in Quebec, and that was like a road trip. I get to coach kids in high school who have gotten the opportunity to play for Alberta, who have already been to Japan and Sweden, Denmark, Macedonia, Kosovo. Like, it's unreal, the opportunities that these kids have to travel and play the game, which ultimately, helps improve that level of play back here in Alberta and in Canada.
Yeah, yeah. And with the school part of it, like, when you were playing, do you kind of remember the amount of teams we used to have? Did you have a league when you were playing in high school?
I feel like we had maybe like a mini one within, a few Edmonton public schools.
Yeah.
And then the big, culmination when we were in high school was provincials were run by Alberta Team Handball. And they weren't, a qualifying basis. They were, kind of a registration. It was, basically a huge provincial-wide tournament. And that was our provincial championship. So I don't know numbers. I know that, I took a bit of a break from that high school. Like I said, I was coaching at Shep for a bit when I started teaching. And then when I got to Eastglen, my first year at Eastglen, so that would have been 2008-9. That was that year it was still Alberta Team Handball ran provincials. And then the next year, the 9-10, was when ASAA adopted handball.
Okay. And so it's
was definitely worth it. And, it was winter in Brazil, but we thought it was summer. So we were playing board games on the beach, and we were the only ones out there. So yeah, those were definitely some highlights for trips outside of Canada. And again, for us, nationals were a highlight. even if it meant it was just Regina or Manitoba or, again, Quebec City, like Sherbrooke or Quebec City, a lot of those was just time with your teammates. It was a great experience for sure.
And like what people don't know now is now we're successful at nationals. We win the majority of them, but back then we were fifth place, fourth place, sixth place. We weren't anywhere where like now we go and we're like, okay, well we'll be in the finals and we'll play Quebec. Do you remember the whole process of what people don't know is you're the one that got me into coaching?
I don't know. So some people might blame me and some people might be happy.
Yeah.
Some people might give me credit for that and others might be cursing me right now.
The first few years they thank you, and then after for a few years they like, why did you ever do that? So
I do remember, I remember years, again, had no idea the first year what expectations would be like, and to lose at that point to Saskatchewan, I didn't know that was a terrible thing, but now I do. No offense, SAS Team Handball. But, those first few years, it was so much about the experience. And, when you went to Quebec and there were 3 Quebec teams in your pool, you just hoped to do the best you could. And then finally, I think it was my last year juniors or my third year juniors. We did decent. And then my last year when we were able to have that under 21 that last year, when the date kind of changed. And that year we beat 2 other Quebec teams and made it to the final. And actually, I think we beat Sask in double overtime that year to make it to the finals against one of the Quebec teams. And so that was, it's come so far. And again, now you kind of look when the schedule comes out and, I've had the privilege of traveling with you to a couple junior nationals where did we go? Winnipeg when the girls won, and Quebec City, and in Winnipeg when the both teams won. So those were pretty great experiences too. And then, I think, I don't think I ever had the privilege of winning at home. I got to play in Edmonton when it was hosted before, but, at that point we didn't win. So I think whenever you get to host here and the teams get to win at home, I think that's a pretty cool opportunity for sure.
Yeah. I remember that last year, of course, when we went to Quebec, as coaches, it was Kelly and myself. We're like, oh yeah, well, hopefully we can beat one of the Quebec teams. And, Kelly came late because he was a teacher, and he comes in, he flew in, we were playing Quebec 2 or something, and we were up by 3 or 4, and he comes on the bench, and I'll never forget, he's like, wow, we're only down by 4? And then I'm like, no, we're winning. He's like, what? It was like that huge thing. And then so we beat them. We got to the semis with Sask, and Sask had at that time, Alberta and Sask were quite at the same level. Was it that game where you and Kim Ryder went head to head?
No, that was the game we went to double overtime with Sask to make the final. No, it was at I feel like it was senior nationals maybe the year after or whatnot. But when Kim and I collided on they were both of us trying to intercept a fast break, and Claire from Saskatchewan saw what was coming and she got out of the way, and I guess my hard head prevailed. I ended up with stitches, and I think Kim ended up in an ambulance. So that's I remember that one for sure.
Yeah. And just going back to then, like when you look at now compared to then, you guys train 2 times a week, maybe 3 so often, but it was training from September till May for a tournament in Regina, the City of Champions tournament.
Yep.
And national championships.
And that pretty much sums up the season. You look at now, again, they have so many more opportunities. They also train, I will say they train harder than we ever did. I'm not saying when we weren't there, we didn't work hard, but the weekend camps that you offer for kids now, and like the youth and the adult player, even senior players, the amount of repetitions, and again, just the quality, right? They get to play against better quality players all the time. Whether it's in league or, just in the training camps.
Yeah. The difference is that when we used to train, you knew everyone was there for the right reasons, because like you're training in September for an event that's 8 months, and it's not like you have an event in 2 months or something. And everyone was always so committed. And we took our bumps, and I think that group was together a couple years working hard to eventually try to win the national championships. So, it's
For
you
sure.
know,
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
yeah, it's not the kids work harder now. It just, like you said, the program's better, the level of coaching is better, the everything is better, the competition is better. Um, so now after you finished, you got into coaching heavily with like becoming a teacher, and you built some amazing programs. Um, First of all, you went to Eastglen, where they didn't even have handball at that time when you went there.
When I got there, they had a guys team that didn't play in the league at that point. I think initially they were just played in the, put a team together for the tournament that Alberta Handball ran when Jeff Fennell
Yeah,
was
yeah,
already at Eastglen before I got there.
yeah.
So my first year at Eastglen, I kind of helped with that team. It was a bit overwhelming being in a high school for the first time as athletic director. So when I just finished coaching basketball, and I thought, I can't do handball right after basketball.
Yeah.
And then I had, that team, I think we did decent I think we were maybe finished fourth at the Alberta one. And then it became ASAA the following year. And the girls wondered why I was a female teacher and I was coaching a boys team and we didn't have a girls team. And so I said, well, let's do both. So my next year, when it became ASAA, I did both boys and girls at Eastglen.
And how was do you remember the results of your first year?
My girls did great. The girls made the city finals. I think we were second in the city and second in the we were second in the city and then we lost the bronze in the final at provincials.
Okay.
A game I still remember we shouldn't have lost, but and then the boys, they didn't fare great. I had a really hard time getting a lot of the good athletes at first at Eastglen. I had kind of one-offs here and there, and a little bit more of the periphery sport athletes decided to try handball, and it wasn't till maybe my third or fourth year at Eastglen that I started getting, some of our main basketball players or some of our football guys that wanted to give handball a try. So the girls, I was able to get the good athletes, pretty quickly, or, a lot of our multi-sport athletes. The boys at Eastglen, it took me a little longer to get the buy-in. And then as soon as they saw the teams being successful, it was one of the few sports that, a school like Eastglen was able to be successful against the Bev Facey's and the Ainleys. And have success. And so when as soon as we started doing that, it opened the door to getting a lot of our better athletes to come and give handball a chance.
But what some people might not know, Eastglen in Alberta, we have tier 1, tier 2 for divisions, and it goes by school numbers. Eastglen was a school just above tier 2, right? They had 600 people or something. Or
when I first started, Eastglen was big. It was like 1,200 kids, and it's slowly declined. I think we were around 750, maybe 750 in the last couple of years that I was there. So it's a jump from tier 1 to tier 2, but we were on the low end of the tier 1 size-wise schools.
When you talk about the big schools like Harry Ainley and Beth Facey, you're talking about 1,600 kids.
2,000 kids, yeah.
Yeah, 2,000 kids. A big question that I don't even know if you know this, but a lot of people always ask me is how does Kate Greabeiel get all the top athletes to play handball?
I beg, I bribe them. No, just kidding. Honestly, it's getting to know your athletes, and I think being a teacher is a huge difference that compared to an out-of-school coach. I know, I get an opportunity to see these kids and get to know them through whether it's phys ed classes or other teams that they're on. As an athletic director, I really make a point of trying to watch all of my other teams play. So I show up to, the senior volleyball games. I, try and make it out to swim or cross country. And so I get a chance to see a lot of our student athletes and it's just that conversation, offering them a chance at something that they haven't tried, a chance to be successful at a level that maybe they haven't been successful at before. And I always tell them, I can teach you how to play handball. I can't teach you to be the athlete that you are. It happened for me when I switched to Osborne the first year. My two superstars that I was able to convince to play, I walked in, the gym the first week, they're playing volleyball, they're both left-handed, they play basketball at lunch and they can dunk. And I thought, these kids got to play handball. So it took some convincing, but again, once you get a couple of your top athletes that buy in, it brings the other ones. It's kind of like a field of dreams. You build it and they will come. Yeah. I think with handball, you get a few of your top athletes to buy in, and then the other ones see that it's a really cool opportunity. And again, it gives a lot of these kids a chance to be successful in a sport when they may not have had that same success against some of the other bigger schools throughout their high school career.
So you think though the big thing is the success that brings in the top athletes?
No, I don't think I don't necessarily think that that's the be all end all. I think the fact that it gives, like I said, for the schools that I've been at, having been at Eastglen and then at Osborne, we're not the top tier schools in most, a lot of other sports. And handball, we have that opportunity to compete at the higher level. Doesn't mean we have to win, but being able to compete in that Division I and go to a provincial championship, there's no other team sports that at Osborne, besides our cheer team, that have been to a provincial championship. And, so some of that, the opportunities that are there, I think is a big thing. But yeah, I don't know. I think that the opportunity to compete at the highest level is something that draws those top athletes to a new sport.
I agree with you and I disagree because you're a big part of why those teams are very successful. So like you say, well, you're wanting, they see success with it, but those schools would not have success in handball without you, in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinions. So it's not as easy as it's not that easy to be successful. And I think you were able to make those players fall in love with the game. And the main thing I believe in your success in your programs is that those players buy into you as a coach. I think those kids would do anything for you. And I think that's a huge thing that why your programs have been so successful.
Well, I appreciate that. I think maybe, I hope kids enjoy playing for me. I think that, when I first get to a school, like when I first started at Eastglen, they didn't have a clue who I was. They were upset that I was replacing, people that were leaving before me that they really liked. Similar at Osborne, I was, coming in and taking the places of other people. And so I think initially it took a while to, I don't think I was the draw initially. And, I know now that there are some kids that come out because they want a chance to play for me. And, that means a lot to me that other kids must enjoy playing for me if, the word is there that, it's good to play for Greabeiel. The kids joke that I'm totally different when I coach, volleyball compared to handball. They say I'm not even the same person. Just the intensity level is so different. They joke that I throw my whiteboard marker up and down, and when I drop it, it means I'm not happy. So it's funny the kid things that the little, the mannerisms that your kids notice in you that sometimes you don't think are that obvious, but I guess they are.
So now, with Eastglen and Lillian Osborne, you've had great successes. You're at 6 provincial championships within those 2 schools as a coach?
No, just 5.
Just 5, sorry. A very good chance would have been a 6 this year with the boys.
I'm never gonna, I never want to give anyone else any more extra motivation to come beat us. I think I joke with my kids that I tell them, people want to beat Osborne, people really want to beat me. Yeah. So I say we've always got a target on our back, but I do think that I was very disappointed that we lost this season. I think both my boys and the girls would have been solid. I know the girls would have been up really tough against your girls from Sal, but I think we hopefully would have made it back to the finals. And we were hosting this year, so that would have been a great opportunity to play in our gym. The first championship that Osborne boys won was in our gym, and going for 4 in our gym would have been pretty cool. But I've been really fortunate. And on the girls' side, I can't seem to break through. And, I've got, I think there's, 11 provincial tournaments, and I've coached the girls in 10 out of the 11, but can't seem to bring home the gold medal. And for the boys, I've been lucky, and I've coached them in 6 tournaments, and I've got 5 championships. So I don't know, I'm doing something right on one side, I guess.
Well, I remember the one year with Eastglen, you had a team that was one of the top favorites to win that provincials, and then everyone decided to do silly things the week of or something. One rolled his ankle.
Well, the first year that the boys made it to provincials, the boys' first provincials, we lost in the city finals, and then we had a decent shot going into provs, and arguably my best player was dunking, at the rec center the night before, and blew out his ankle and was on crutches the next day. So our team kind of self-imploded after that, but luckily quite a few of them were back the following year, and we hosted, and they were able to bring home the title that year. And Eastglen boys had a chance. They did it back-to-back with me. And like I said, I have 2 of my Osborne guys that I think are the only 2 Tier 1 guys or girls that have won 3 championships off years of high school. So Kayla and Cole are in a pretty special group, especially with this year getting canceled. So
Yeah, exactly. Now, with your coaching, you've been able to send a lot of your players to play Alberta. Um, I mean, you've taken kids that are multi-sport athletes, like you said, great athletes. You've coached them in handball, and like you said, it wasn't just they wanted to play handball. You had to talk to them. Hey, come try it, and you helped them fall in love with the sport. And now a lot of them have come to provincial teams, being very successful with the provincial teams. I mean, you look at some of your players like Noah, who played overseas, who he said in the podcast that in grade 10 he was a bench warmer, and the only reason he was on the team was because Aloysius was his friend. You have Cole, who kind of said the same thing in grade 10. He was a bench warmer. He played overseas. He was on the national team, qualified for the World Championships, is an incredible player. You've coached a lot of players that have made handball their number one sport, fallen in love, given back to the sport. You have coaches that come out of your program. What are some of the successes you like to see in those kids, other than, they love to win provincial championships and city championships, but outside of that, like seeing them succeed outside of the school handball?
I think for me, like, you mentioned it, the coaches are coming out of it too. And so for me, I think one of the most rewarding thing is when, my players come back and coach with me or for me. Hong has coached with me at Eastglen, and then at Oz, he came across he lives on the north side. He came across with me to Osborne, and Hong's been a part of, all of my guys' championships. And, he was one of my players. He played for me in grade 12. And, and then since then I've had other, players at Osborne come back and coach on both the guys and the girls side as much as they can with, a lot of them are post-secondary, students. So it's, adding it to their schedule. Plus a lot of them, the ones that coach, a lot of them also do stick around and play handball, whether it's Alberta or they play league. And, I've been fortunate to coach the NWA U19 guys, with a lot of my high school guys choosing to continue on outside of school. Yeah. So I think that is a big thing. And again, I teach them what they need to know in handball for 6 weeks. I don't get the credit when it comes to watching Noah and Cole and the abilities that they've got in terms of, their technical abilities. I'm the first person to tell you that that's not what I spend a lot of time on, because I don't have that much time in high school. I'm more worried about what the rules are and, whose ball is it when it goes out of bounds and, those kind of things. So for me, the fact that, I'm able to make the game enjoyable for them so that then they want to pursue that opportunity with Alberta. And that's where, their technical skills and game sense and stuff improve so much more, just the number of touches. High school handball is such a short season here, right, that there's only so much we can do. And, the Alberta program has developed into such a comprehensive program, depending on which parts or which trips they're involved with, that they have a chance to practice, I don't want to say 12 months of the year, but a big chunk of the year. So I think watching the improvement they have, and, you and I have spoken about it before, it's always great to have, them come back from a summer of Alberta and see the difference, the improvement within their high school game. I support Alberta 100%, and I always encourage my kids to be involved. And although I do absolutely enjoy having a team with no Alberta players and beating teams full of Alberta players, which I've had the opportunity to do at least once. So that's pretty fun.
Yeah. Well, that's success. Like I have always said, I still think you're, not to be rude, we have a lot of great coaches, but I still think you're the best high school coach that we have. The successes and the things you do with your kids. And I mean, season of plays from February 15th to the last day of provincials, which is usually first week in May, second week in May, is incredible what you do in the short amount of time. And like you said, you don't have a lot. You're one of those schools that doesn't have a great feeder system.
I don't think very many. Yeah, we don't have too many kids that come out of junior high having ever seen a handball or played handball or anything. We have, one or two whose schools might have played in the, the junior high tournament that Alberta Team Handball puts on. But for the most part, when I get the kids in grade 10, besides maybe having played it in gym with, modified rules, they don't really know what they're getting into. So
as a coach, as a very successful coach, if you can tell a coach that's coming out, like a new teacher that's part of handball program or starting handball or wanting more? What do you think are the main things to teach kids in high school uh, for them to have the best success in the leagues and tournaments? What would you think is
So you
the?
want me to give away all my secrets, eh?
Well, you don't have to give away your secrets, but ideas, because like again, we have different philosophies. Like I'm very big on individual technique. Like they have to be perfect technical stuff. You're more of a coach, and that's why I say you're an incredible coach, because you're about making them sure they know the game of handball. So they take those advantages after fouls or whatever. So what are
For
some
me,
of the things you think?
well, for me, I think it's systems, right? And a lot of that is because, I was a goalie. Like when I played, I was fortunate. I've played on some fantastic teams, and, I had some great players in front of me. But as a goalie, I see the game differently. And so I kind of coach like I played. So I don't have I've gone to coaching clinics and, watched the videos and things like that, but I don't have the knowledge to, work on shooting technique and footwork and stuff to the extent that I feel that that would make a difference in their game in the 6 weeks that they play with me. So for me, it's just, again, so much of it is going through basics, the rules, because handball is such a subjective sport in terms of referee, judgment calls on a lot of things. And, just knowing whose possession it is and being able to take advantage of things like that. I think that's one of the biggest things for me is just, again, the gameplay. And I don't do anything fancy. I don't teach my kids plays. They try, and you can ask Cole how many times he's tried to put in plays, and I just roll my eyes. And, we just kind of do the fundamentals well. But again, it's not necessarily the technical fundamentals. It's the team play that we do very well. And, we've had that success. And I just, again, I try and keep it as simple as I can. And I want them to enjoy the game. I know that the kids and everyone, knows that I'm ultra competitive in everything I do in my life. But even if we lose, it's not the end of the world. I'm okay losing as long as they still, enjoyed it. I think sometimes the problem you get into when you win or you have a really successful program is people don't know any different. They don't know how to lose and learn things from it. So I think, honestly, I've had a couple experiences where we've watched teams, kill another team, and players on my team have looked at me and said, "You'd never let us do that. You wouldn't let us run a score up like that," or things like that. So the fact that they learn that there's more to it than winning, that I hope that I'm instilling that in them, that's one of the bigger things to me, is that they enjoy playing.
Yeah. But I mean, when it comes to handball in school, and I mean, we're growing and we have a great league and great provincials, but you also have to be like, that other schools are out to get the Osborne, right? It's that you're very well known in the handball community. You're an ASAA commissioner. So people know Kate Greabeiel as the handball person. And so, you have that rivalries, but it's also like, the other schools are working their butts off to beat your school.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I'm fully aware that, there's a target on my back. And I tell the kids sometimes I feel bad for them. I apologize that the target's on my back, not on theirs. But, I know someday we'll lose. The boys, we've lost cities. We have yet to win a city championship at Osborne. We have 3 provincial titles, but, the city championship eludes us. On the guys' side, it's more of a jinx to win cities. I think look back, I think it's 2014 when Eastglen won our first provincials, and we also won cities that year. And no other boys team since then has done both. If you win cities, you don't win provs. And, my kids joke that the shirts you get at provs are nicer. So they, that's the bigger one to win for them. But I know that, one day we won't make a provincial championship, or one day, we did come close last year and last season at Osborne. Our quarterfinal game, I know you mentioned it, when you did your podcast with Cole, and he said something about it being last regular season game, but it was our first playoff game. And, he wasn't getting back from Kosovo in time, which we knew, which wasn't, the end of the world. We can play without Cole. But, Corbin rolls his ankle that weekend right before in Red Deer, when that was a big blow for us. And one of my other kids one of my starting kids made a questionable decision while we were in Red Deer, and, found himself unable to play on the Monday too. So like Cole mentioned, I was without 3 starters against, a very good up and coming team from Page with a lot of energy and, that desire, like you said, the desire to beat us. Wilson would have loved nothing more than to beat us and get to tell Cole when he got home that, he knocked us out. But so we were close, definitely that one. There, I might have gotten a few gray hairs in that one, but we pulled it out. And, so I know the day's going to come that we're not going to win. But until then, I'm going to ride with it and, keep encouraging my kids to enjoy the game. And when you love what you're doing, you play better, I think.
Yeah. I think that's what you instill, is that the passion those kids have to play and to enjoy it is pretty incredible. And I mean, Lillian Osborne, when they started handball with handball when their school opened, and they weren't successful their first few years. And I mean, the change really came when you came there. I think the first year, you hosted the first year you were at Lillian?
No, my first year we didn't make props. That's the only year in ASAA like provincials that I haven't coached either a guys or a girls team in provincials. Had I stayed at Eastglen, the Eastglen guys would have had a really good shot to three-peat if I had stayed there. But for professional reasons, I made the change, and I knew it would be a learning experience. And I remember you and I joked. You said, I'll give you a year. It'll take you a year, then you'll be competitive. And then we, pretty much dominated the following year. And you're like, well, I knew you'd be competitive. I didn't think in a year you'd kill everyone. So,
well, the funny thing is, we start talking a lot. I mean, when high school handball season, we're the best of friends, because we talk about our teams to each other. We call and how are tryouts, how's this, and then they talk every year around February 15th is, I don't know if we're going to be strong this year from you. I wouldn't say we're going to be that good. I'm like, be quiet. We know you're going to be there. It's just quite funny every single year. So
again, I will never be that coach that gives other teams more reason to beat us. I'm never going to be that person that you're going to get a quote from that says, Osborne thinks they're going to beat whoever. That'll never come from me. I want how my team plays on the court to be what decides everything. And I don't think that as a coach, that's not my role to, instigate anything or, create any more rivalries than we already have, right?
Yeah. And I mean, people that don't know in Alberta, our high school leagues and tournaments, and we have a lot of tournaments. I mean, what people don't understand, in an 8-week span, how many games do you coach?
When I'm coaching both guys and girls, usually within the high school season, I coach almost 60 handball games.
Yeah. So, I mean, your average from Monday to Thursday, you're coaching 2 games a day.
Coaching 2 games a day plus practicing with the opposite team.
Yeah. And then weekends, pretty much every weekend other than school holidays like spring break, there's a tournament every single weekend.
Yeah, pretty close. We try and play in as many tournaments to get that different competition. So usually, we take spring break off, and then Easter weekend usually falls somewhere within our high school season. But most weekends I'll coach 10 to 12 games in a weekend between the two teams. Yeah.
So our season is high school handball here is one of my favorite things. It's something I love watching the players. And like you said earlier on, the level is getting so much higher, the teams, the competitiveness. I remember when Alberta Handball, I remember one year, maybe 2006, when we used to host it and teams were just showing up. And I remember walking to a gym and it was like the last place game. So they ended up, I walk in and the teams are playing football instead of playing handball. And I stopped the game, and, where we've come in 15 years is insane. Where now
it's very impressive. I actually just, as you mentioned earlier, being the team handball commissioner with the ASAA, I'm in my second term. So I've done, I think 6 years, it's a 4-year term, and this is my partway through my second one. So I think I'm at about 6 years with my involvement with ASAA. And for me, that was really eye-opening, joining ASAA and getting to see the difference between rural and urban, like city sports, right? I mean, being a part of Edmonton and playing in Metro, and Metro has 54 schools. I wish all 54 played handball, but, we still have a huge proportion of the, especially tier 1 teams in the province are all Edmonton based. So to kind of see what rural, programs go through handball wise and other sport wise within the province, was a big difference. And I, actually just finished my master's in athletic administration through a U.S. School. And my final project was analyzing, the 10 years that handball been in ASAA and looking at where we're growing, looking at where we still need to improve, what kind of things have changed in terms of, rules or things that we've implemented to to stay up to date with the game now, right? So it was interesting to look back to kind of when it first made that switch from Alberta Handball to ASAA.
My question is, I was going to ask you about ASAA as a commissioner, and one of the questions I was going to ask you is, and obviously you worked on it, is where do you see that we really need to work on to grow it? Because in Tier 1, it's Edmonton area-based. Central area is growing with Tier 1. Calgary, we have a lot of trouble, and we can't really get outside of that in Tier 1. Tier 2, we're spreading around, but what do you think is the big issue? And what do you think, as Alberta Handball, as the commissioner, we really need to work, as ASAA, we really need to work on to get out there?
You know, it's different because you get to sit at those tables and you have conversations with different people. And I've, had the opportunity to talk to Calgary in terms of, what's hindering Calgary from being involved. And, theirs is a totally different, it's more of a financial, league type situation in terms of how their sports are run versus how ours are run. I think, I'll be honest, I think a lot of it is knowledge. I think that, because our base is so much in terms of players who then become coaches is so centralized, in Edmonton and then now central. I think there's a lot of hesitation that teachers don't understand the game well enough. They don't know it well enough, and, they're not, I mean, there are opportunities. Obviously, I know that Alberta Handball, is happy to go and run, coaching clinics for players and or coaches and things like that. But I think, the knowledge is something that does scare people away from bringing in a new sport that they aren't knowledgeable about. Yeah. I think, that's when you see a lot of the difference. If we get a player from somewhere and they go back to their community, right? I think that's when we get to kind of see sometimes the growth in those areas. Yeah. Part of my, where I'm going to kind of look further to it too is I don't know what the number is of Tier 1, because handball, we're one of the anomalies with ASAA. And for anyone that doesn't already know, that's Alberta Schools Athletic Association. So the ASAA, most sports are tiered, Tier 1, Tier 2. Football, sorry, is like Tier 1, Tier 2, but everything else is 1A, 2A, 3A, and 4A. And handball, we went with Tier 1 and 2 with a different kind of number gap. So I actually couldn't tell you off the top of my head how many Tier 1, so 400 plus schools are in each of the zones. Yeah. So I think that, looking at that is something too, because if some of the zones only have 4 schools, and it's tough if only 4, if that's who, we're trying to get only 4 schools to play kind of thing, right? So, yeah. Whereas in Edmonton, Tier 1, we have, if they all chose to play, we have 30 schools probably in Metro that at least fall into that category.
Yeah. Okay.
I think officials is another thing too. I think, like you said, with knowledge, I think, again, you can run officials clinics and things, but if they're not familiar with the game, I think it's a bit intimidating to come in, so I think sometimes the logistical pieces of coaching and officials, might be something that hinders some of the more rural areas from bringing it in.
Yeah. I mean, from Alberta Handball, the way I look at it is, we try to contact those zones. We put on clinics, but, you have to have that side as well, want to learn more about the game.
Oh, 100%. And I think, the season of play for us, it's the only logical time that it fits. Yeah. But, we're allowed to start, like you mentioned, a couple of times, February 15th. But for a lot of schools, that's still full-fledged basketball season, and if you're a school where a basketball team has a chance at a provincials or anything, they're going to mid-March, which kind of overlaps with the start of handball. Yeah. That, was a big part. This year would have been the first year we were looking at pushing back handball provincials and moving them to the second weekend of May rather than the end of April, because to try and give those schools, a little bit more of an opportunity for once basketball finishes for them to start getting involved, getting those players out for handball. The only thing in that point it's conflicting with a lot is badminton, but in some of our zones in the south, it does conflict with baseball and some of the outdoor activities getting started, so sometimes I think, we can't go another time because we conflict with volleyball or basketball. So it's, it's the season that we have to fit into. But I think sometimes, unfortunately, for some zones, that seems to be a hindrance as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's sad about this year because, there was a team from Onaway, a school from Onaway was starting more schools you were seeing come in. And I mean, we grow every year by few schools, but it seems like it's more Tier 2 schools than Tier 1 schools. What do you think is the big thing why, we've talked about this off camera a lot. I'm a believer in one tier because I believe that there's a lot of Tier 2 schools that can compete with tier one. But then there's the schools that are like, well, we'll never compete with the Osbornes, the Sal's, the Facey's. And so I mean, obviously we're worried that they would just drop off. What do you think is the reason why to stay tier one and tier two?
I think, I think the biggest piece, I don't disagree. I don't disagree that, that the possibility of, going back to one division with qualifications and stuff, I don't think that would ruin the game by any means. And, I think staying a part of ASAA is an important piece for handball. I think, again, it's opportunities, right? If you run 2 championships, you've got more chances for kids to get an opportunity to play at an elite level. So you've got, with the 2 championships, you've got, tier 2 has oftentimes, 8 teams aside, so you've got 16 teams, 10 to 15 players a team. That's a lot of kids getting a chance, again, to experience a provincial level, a championship level, at that they may not get to otherwise. Again, I think one of the things that would concern me would just be, in terms of one, might be, what numbers we look at in terms of like hosting, right? Having more capability to host. I think that's a big factor that we run into right now is, a lot of schools not being able to host because of the requirements of the size of a handball court, right? Being able to have the size of a court plus spectators, I think that's a deterrent at sometimes. But again, if it were to go that route, then you'd have to look at splitting guys and girls into different locations, right? To be able to have possibly the number of facilities that you might need, depending again on how many teams, we included in that, right? But I think that, some of the, again, like you pointed out, some of the tier two teams would choose, that they would feel that they couldn't be competitive. But I do agree with you that, in the grand scheme of things, for the most part, it's a, 6-week, 8-week season. And yeah, you might get the chance to pull from more student athletes in a bigger school. But, if you're able to get out those multi-sport athletes, those small schools, like you said, a lot of them, they can compete for sure with the bigger tier one schools.
Yeah. I mean, it's all really interesting. I mean, just going back to what you said, is people don't know, we have a lot of people from the States that listen to us because they're really curious about our program. The way it works is that each zone gets a spot at provincials, and you have to qualify within. So when you said there's 8 teams, it's not that we only have 8 teams in the province. It's that those are the only amount of teams that are allowed to play at provincial. So there's zones that have tournaments that you have to qualify for people that don't understand that. But for right now, you see that as ASAA and is to really work on keeping tier 1, tier 2, and trying to grow tier 1. Is that the goal right now?
I think that's the focus right now is to, to try and keep the 2 tiers. But, again, everything, I think everything's fluid and can be adjusted based on, school. And we have no idea what school sport's going to look like post coming out of COVID, right? And what that's, if it's going to take, a lot of different industries are saying it's going to take them, 2 to 4 years to rebound to where they were at pre-pandemic. And I don't know what high school sports look like in terms of when we'll be back and what kind of effect that's going to have on it. So I think it's hard right now to predict, the next couple of years just because of what we might see. But I think, again, I think that it's the best case scenario is to give as many kids an opportunity to play, for a provincial championship as we can. But, that there are options available if we find that we're struggling in certain areas for sure.
Do you enjoy your job with ASAA as commissioner? Do you really enjoy it, being a part of that aspect of the sport?
Yeah, like I said, it's been, my experience with ASAA has been very eye-opening, and realizing how different sport is across our province. We're lucky that in our zone, again, like I've mentioned, Metro has 54 teams, and, I think from Osborne, I can get to every one of those 54 schools in probably 45 minutes, at the most, because we do have surrounding areas. Yeah. But you look at, some of the rural zones in Alberta, and their zone encompasses schools 2.5 hours away, and that's how far they have to travel to play a league basketball game. So there's definitely different issues that we, face with the urban, the big schools. It also, for some of them makes it harder to qualify for some of those championships. It's going to be, our senior men's basketball this year, they were, a few minutes away from having a chance to qualify for a 4A championship, but we're in a way tougher boat, you know, being in Metro with how many 4A schools are in ours, and yet in some zones they might have 2 4A schools, right? And they might have 10 2A, which is the small, you know, a smaller student population, right? So ASAA has definitely opened my eyes to seeing how different high school sport is throughout our province, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think one of the things I love about it all is that schools, like, it's the zone provincial like the zone qualifications for provincials is so passionate. People want to qualify for provincials so badly. It's like an ultimate goal for kids, is to try to hold that banner at the end of it all. And I mean that's why I love school sports. And I mean, for me, obviously handball, but going to I always try to get to as many zone tournaments as I can, just to watch that passion of teams that are trying to qualify. I love even, you know, the negativity of it when zones, you know, you complain that, oh, why didn't we get the wild card and this and that. But I mean, that's all to me, like, his name, I think he's the basketball commissioner, George Hoyt.
No, George is ASAA president.
Okay, he said it to me when I was coaching at Ainley. He's like, hey, when I was coaching at Ainley, he was athletic director. He told me one day, he's like, yeah, we're getting some complaints about handball. But he goes, yeah, you know what, Mike? That's a good thing, because that means people are caring about the sport. So he's like, when people are complaining, when parents are getting more involved, that means it's becoming a sport in the area. So he's like, I love seeing complaints in a good way, because he's like, that means it's growing and it's becoming an important school sport.
No, I agree 100%. I had a similar conversation with George, you know, one of those years, and he said, you know, I got my first playing time complaint from a parent about handball. It means it's a real sport now at Ainley. So, I had a similar conversation with George, for sure. And like you said, it shows that people care about it, right? If there was complete indifference to how what wild cards were, you know, applied, or how team selections were made, you know, it kind of takes something away from it. So I agree that, you know, it's nice to see other people. I don't think anyone will ever meet your passion for handball. You know, during high school season, I think I might be close, but you know, I think that, like you mentioned, you know, you live and breathe high school handball, especially, but you know, handball in general. And I think no one can take more credit, and I know you won't, but for how far handball has come, high school, and again, the Alberta program, especially, with all of the time and energy and stuff that you've invested in that program, I think, you know, players owe you a big thank you.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. But you're a huge part of it. I think it's, you know, we kind of started and fell in love with the sport. And like I say, our high school season, by day 4, you have no more voice. But what people don't understand is after every night, we'll call each other every night of high school season and tell us about our games. We're 2 hours a night. We don't really
it's pretty routine. And then I don't talk to you for about 8 months. But
yeah, I know, eh? It's hilarious. Just a few more questions. As a player, if you can pick one game, one trip that was the best experience for you as a player, what would it be?
I think trip-wise, probably, again, having the opportunity to play with Team Canada. You know, that trip, it was there. We took 4 goalies to that one, and I was kind of on the bubble going into that one. So even getting to dress for a couple of games, I was it meant a lot to me to wear a Canada jersey, and I made a couple saves on a fast break, and there were actually fans in the stands when we played in Brazil. So that was pretty memorable for me. But I think the first time I got to win provincials as a senior, it wasn't as exciting because we won in Winnipeg and Quebec didn't come. So I think we won the final by 20. Like, it was kind of anticlimactic, but it was cool that, that was my first provincial or first national championship. And a lot of the girls that I was playing with were quite a bit younger than me, and they had won juniors, the year or two, couple of years before. Yeah. So then I think it was the following year when we went to Quebec, and I think we won in Quebec. And, as a senior, and I think that was, or whatever it was, but we won a senior championship with a Quebec team at it. Yeah. I think that was, definitely for the Canadian championships, a huge memory. And, then I took some time off when I got to Eastglen and, became an athletic director and had no clue how much work that would involve. And started coaching and, stopped playing for a few years. And then, Amber came to me one day and said, we want you to come back. We need a goalie.
Yeah, that's
You
right.
can just play club. You can just play club. You don't have to play Alberta. And I said, okay, I'll play club. And I found it hard to play just club because everyone else is still playing Alberta and practicing, and you find that you're not as good as you used to be, and they're all still getting better. And so about halfway through that season, they convinced me that I should go with Alberta to U.S. Nationals.
Oh, yeah.
And so U.S. Nationals were in Minneapolis, and I'd never been to Minneapolis. I thought that was kind of cool. So I thought, I kind of hummed and hawed, and about 2 months before the championship, one of the other goalies decided not to go because I said, I didn't want to cause any issues with being a goalie. It's a different position, right? Your playing time's a little different. You can't sub on and off to get everyone in a couple minutes here and there. Yeah. And so we went to Minneapolis and we won U.S. Nationals. We beat Chicago in the final, and I had taken 3 years off, I think, and I was top goalie at the tournament at U.S. Nationals. So I think for me that was probably a big highlight, was coming back, and it was so cool to play different teams. Again, we look forward every year to playing Quebec and, going to a national championship. And like you said, people from the U.S. that listen, a lot of our national championships might have Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Quebec, 4 provinces. So to get to go play at U.S. national championships, and we got to play, West Point, we got to play Colorado, we got to play Chicago, we got to play New York, we got to play it was so cool to go to a tournament and play teams we'd never seen before. It was a great opportunity, and that I think was probably one of my biggest highlights, especially after having taken some time off and coming back to that.
Yeah, I remember that just when you said that. I don't know if you know, but there's a movie that was made about New York Team Handball Club. It's called, I forgot what it's called, but it was about their journey and them winning that USA Nationals in the men's side, and you guys are in a lot of clips of it.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, I'll look it up because it's on it's on YouTube and stuff, and it's a great movie. It's about an hour long, and it's about everything that went on with them. But it was like, I just remember watching, like, hey, there we are. There's the girls. So I mean, it's pretty cool. As a coach, what are some of the top 3 games you've coached and you've been very proud of yourself, win or lose, but you thought you did a great job, and after that game you were just like, I was proud of myself, I was proud of my team?
I think winning the first provincial title at Eastglen, doing it at home, doing it against J. Percy Page, who we'd had a bit of some animosity against, the previous season and leading up to it. And, earlier that season, they had destroyed us in a game, and, to come back. And again, we were fortunate. We won cities and provincials in our own gym, and to bring, again, like I said, a provincial title in a different sport, but in a sport to Eastglen was pretty memorable for me. And then again, I think same thing, at Osborne, getting to win the first one in our own gym. Again, high school sport in Canada, I guess, to a certain degree, you don't see a ton of, fans in the stands. The majority of our, league games, you'll see, a handful of parents and the team that's playing next, or the team that's playing in between, or, maybe the girls will stay to watch the boys team. And to host the provincial title in our gym, and our final was against a team that beat us in the city final. They kind of surprised us, and we took it, maybe for granted. And so to be able to overcome having lost to them in a game we didn't think we would lose, to face them again in our own gym in a packed crowd. And it was, both sides. SPA had some amazingly vocal fans in that game. And I know, so that was a big one for me on the guys' side. And again, they're both wins. But, and then on the girls' side, I think the girls probably one of my highlights. Again, at Eastglen, we won some city championships, and unfortunately provincials kind of didn't go our way. We had some things happen every year that, I don't know, I guess turned the tides the wrong way or something. Someone beat someone that we didn't think that would happen, and it kind of, hurt us on that side. But my last game coaching Eastglen girls, even though it was a bronze game, it was, I had a great group of 6 graduating players, and, Moyen, that was, her last time playing for me. And, she's kind of one of my adopted children, and, getting to, finish with her before I left for Osborne, that was probably one of my girls' highlight games. Since I've been at Osborne, probably the girls' highlight game would have been the semi at SPA when we beat Sal by 1, to make it to the final. I think that would have been a big highlight for us.
And you talked about fans just before. Regular season, you don't see a lot of fans. Like you said, you have other teams, you have parents, a few friends, maybe like 40, 50 people in the stands. But when it comes to city finals, tournament finals, and provincial finals, it's jam-packed. I remember the one game, there had to be the officer had to be at the game because the fans from each school were like really vocal, and people were kind of worried of what was going to happen. So
they were probably worried about me as far as what they were worried about.
But I mean, I remember even the other one. You remember SPA, your double overtime provincial championship win?
We won in a shootout. Yeah,
shootout.
That was.
And you could not sit in that gym. It was standing room only. It was crazy. Someone brought it up with me yesterday because talking about making a promotional video. They're like, you need to get that game. Because that game
or, last year, the city final, the boys game with us and Harry Ainley, which we didn't win that one. But the atmosphere in our gym, I had Scott Bazubiak, who he's one of the ones that got me into handball. He was student teaching way back when I was at Shep, and, he's at Ainley now. And his daughter actually made my team this year. She would have played for me. So it's kind of Maya would have played on my team this year. So if we'd have had a season, but so that kind of has come full circle because Scott was one of my very first coaches. But, he said after that game, it was one of the, best environments of a high school handball game he's ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
And so again, it was, it's pretty cool to see the passion come out in students and parents and people that are there to support, your athletes on the court for sure.
And half the parents don't know what the rules are, but they sure know how to yell at the referees, eh?
Well, coming out to beach handball the other night, and I'm not 100% sure on some of the beach rules, but I was sitting with Noah's mom. I was sitting with Renee, and I said, there's a reason I don't sit in the stands at any handball event because I cannot handle listening to parent interpretations of the rules that they just, again, it's such a subjective sport and they just don't understand some of it. And, I don't want to turn around and correct them every time. So I don't stay in the stands. I stay as far away from the stands at any handball type event if I can.
Yeah, I'm like you because I just get in fights in the stands. Like, I can't stand that stuff either. And what are some of your future goals with handball? More of in a coaching aspect with your high school teams, with ASAA. What are some of your goals that you have in that part?
I don't know. I think it's tough. I would love to, again, and I don't want to make it about winning. I'd love to see my girls team at one point, take home a provincial title. Because like I said, we've had a lot of circumstances go against us when we get to that point. As a commissioner, again, I'd like to, help be a part of seeing handball grow in some of the zones that don't have it, or just, number of schools. I'd love to see within Metro more schools play. Right now it's, significantly dominant in terms of teams that existed prior to the, Metro join, like Edmonton Public Schools and stuff, joining with Metro. And so a lot of, some of the periphery schools within Metro still, the handball's not a priority to them. So I would love to see within, even Metro as a kind of a smaller goal to see more of our schools buy in for handball. Again, for me, it's just, I want kids to enjoy playing. That's my favorite time of year, and not just because I get to talk to you every day, but, I get to live and breathe. I'm at school at 7 a.m. and I'm home at 10 p.m. and my dogs might forget who I am by the end of that. But, it's when I feel the best. And honestly, for me, that was the hardest part about COVID was, it happening, the day before handball, we were supposed to play at a tournament at Sal that Friday morning, and that turned out to be the last day of school. And, that's what, honestly, I know it's a global pandemic and people are dying. And for the first 6 weeks, that's what hit me the hardest was the fact that I didn't get to see my kids every day. And
when it's such a big part of your life and everything, it wasn't easy, that's for sure.
No, and then when they started canceling things like the Olympics and stuff like that, I realized that, high school, one season of high school wasn't going to make or break anything. But, for those kids, I know, and some of the kids, it did. And I felt really bad for, kids who had looked forward to that as their, last season, especially our grade 12s, that was their last chance to play with each other and play with friends and things like that. So it did hit pretty hard. And, everyone lost, we've all lost something through this whole, pandemic. And I think we just have to try and make the most of it.
Yeah. But just hope by high school handball season this year, everything is back to normal as much as it can be, and we can have a season and do what we love and watch the kids play and fall in love with the sport.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, let's hope. I don't know what the new normal is going to look like, but hopefully we get there sooner than later for sure.
Yeah, and like when you look all over North America, I mean, in Alberta, we do it right. We have high school leagues all over the province. We have tournaments all over the province. We have youth leagues, junior high, and I mean, it's hopefully it just continues after COVID, and we get back to what we're doing and the growth of it. So we'll see what happens. But anyways, like you being a part of handball for so long, and you being a major part of why where handball is now, and as Alberta Handball, just want to thank you for all you've done for the sport, and you continue to do for the sport, because like you say, without people like you, this sport would never be where it is, because even though you have your school and you love your school and you want to be successful in your school, but you still look out for the betterment of the sport all over the province. And like you said, yes, I want to win every year, but if I don't win and I see the experience was an amazing experience, if I see new teams playing, then it's okay. And so I just want to thank you for everything you've done. I mean, all the players that you've pushed to play Alberta. I mean, just look at some of your players and what they've done in the world. And like those kids would never have those experiences if it wasn't for you. Especially a kid like Cole, who would have never played for me if it wasn't for you, because I would have kicked him off the team probably 3 days into it.
Trust me, Cole, I wasn't sure I wanted to take him in grade 10. I know I've listened to his podcast, and, you asked him how much he played, and, he says, oh, not very much. And I kind of wanted to call him out on that, because, we were pretty freaking good that year, that he did get to play, a pretty decent amount because of how good the rest of the team was. He wasn't, in that elite group at that point because he just started playing. But, we had some amazing guys that, got us some pretty good leads that guys like Cole did get in. But, like you said, I have some, former players that have gone on to do some great things. And I think it's amazing that they can do that on the handball court. But again, for me, so much of it is the people that they've become, watching some of my former players become teachers, again, go back and coach, things like that. And I'm so proud of them transferring stuff that hopefully I've helped, them learn and experience through sport, but transferring that to the life every day. I think that as a teacher, and, that's one of the most important parts for me.
And, I know a lot of the younger kids these days, they don't thank their coaches much, come back. But you know what, though, when you talk to like the Noah that's playing Cole, they talk very, very highly of you. So even though they might not say it to you, but they always, when we talk about past, there's nothing but like so much respect from them. So
well, I appreciate that. I listened to Noah's podcast, and I messaged him after, and I said I appreciated the shout out and his story about making the team. And then he mentions Craig, calls Craig his first coach, and I called him out on that. He goes, oh, I meant Alberta. And then I joked with Cole's mom, and I said, I don't think Cole mentions my name once in the podcast. And she said, oh, I think he does. I said, no, I think Mike brings it up. I said, Cole talks about high school, but I don't think Cole talks about me very much. So
it's funny because
I appreciate it.
But it's funny because like people always talk, oh, I didn't say this and I should have said this. I'm going to make a podcast of like the things you wanted to say. And so everyone has a 5-minute chance to go over everything again. Because even Greg Chauvet's like, oh, I should have thanked some coaches. I should have done this. So it's quite funny. But
well, it's fair. But yeah, no, it's different. Any type of, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. I know that I've watched a lot of the handball, where are they now kind of video, clips and things like that. And a lot of those are players I played with, or, were on the men's team at the same time that I was playing, through the women's program. And I kind of was like, well, I guess he doesn't have to do one. Where are they now with me? Because I'm still around, and I'm again at the gym or at handball finals, and it was great to come watch beach the other night and get to see some new people, and it's fun to see again just the evolution and the growth of the sport for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And like I look in those, where are they now? We're talking about where are they now with people that are 24, 25 years old. If you look at, if we had all our players that were 30 and under still play handball, it would be insane what we would have in Alberta. Like how good we would be.
Yeah, I agree. I get it that life, happens, and, people, move away or get jobs and have families, and, that it changes things for sure. But, and again, like I said, it's hard to come back, once you left. I have a lot of respect for, some of the girls that I played with that, still put a team into the league last year. And and stuff like that, like players like Alexis and Kristen, and who I think are both 5-6 years younger than me, and they're still stepping on the court. And for me, the biggest change was once I was going to practice after coaching against players like Izzy, and I'm doing goalie drills, and I'm like, I just coached against Facey, and now I'm going to practice with her. For me, I think was when I was kind of like, I think I'm good. I think I've done enough, I've accomplished enough on the court that I'm okay to take it all off the court now and still get to experience so many great things for my players on the court.
Exactly. Well, thank you for doing this, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon. And so thank you very much, Kate.
No problem. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate the opportunity.
We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Bye.
Changed quite a bit. So going back to your handball career before we get into all your coaching, what are some of the things you remember as a player, like the trips you went on? Because I believe you got to go to one Europe trip as a player.
As a player, I got to go to Denmark. So right after Mike Ney had started in Denmark, a year or two after, I think, his club hosted us at Christmas at Denmark. And so that we had our food families. And so some of the girls that we got to go grocery shopping. And I think I was lucky enough that Monica was in my family and she did a lot of the cooking. And now she owns restaurants. So Denmark, I think, was a fantastic trip. I remember, just again, you remember weird things. I remember that the showers were not wonderful, and that we were all like had deadlines and how long you could spend in a shower.
Because of the hot water, right?
Yeah, it would run out. You got up and you'd set an alarm at 6 a.m. just to shower and then go back to bed. And it was cold. I remember Denmark, they got snow for the first time in a long time that year, and or the first time that year and stuff when we were there. But Denmark. And then when I got to go to Brazil with Team Canada, that was a really cool opportunity to play in the Pan Am Championships. And then they offered for us to spend an extra week if we were all able to. And I know I was one of the ones, most of the girls were in school and I was teaching at the time. So getting the time off